Hello. So for those of you who don't know me or forgot who I am, my name is Sheri Sapone and I attend the Heights Church. I'm a registered nurse, so Pastor D asked me to talk about grief and loss. Last time she asked me to talk, it was about death and dying, and I'm really starting to see a little bit of a pattern here. So next year, I already asked her if I could sign up for the balloon animal talk and try to change my focus a little bit. So does being a nurse make me an expert on grief and loss? Not necessarily, but nurses do deal a lot with difficult grief and loss situations all the time, no matter what realm of nursing you're in. And most nurses I know are trained in psychology with grief and loss as a side subject. And most nurses use the Kubler-Ross method. And this was written by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and she wrote a pretty famous book in 1969 on the stages of grief. So this discussion is really based on what we know is the Kubler-Ross method. So what's crazy about this topic is that Pastor D actually asked me last August, so August of 2019, to talk about it. So that was before the word corona was really associated with anything besides beer, basically. Before there was really even a whiff of anything that was going to be going on now in May of 2020. So I find that pretty cool that God's timing really is always sovereign and it's always perfect. I also want to say, really, this is a very big topic, and we're going to be talking about it for about 15 or 20 minutes, depending on how fast I talk when I get going. And I know there's a lot of people out there that do this for a living, that specialize it and study in it, and really make it their life's work. So we're going to just kind of dive into some basics that might help you get a little springboard to really kind of know where to go with it, maybe for more resources if you need it, or just give you some tips and tricks on how to help other people deal with their grief. What's really important to know about these stages of grief that I'm going to talk about is that although we talk about them in a linear way or like a straight line, really grief doesn't necessarily behave like that. And it's really important for us to remember that because both for ourselves, if we're grieving, or for others, if we're dealing with other people that have grief or loss in their lives, it really helps us to remember to be kind to ourselves and to be kind to other people. Everyone's different. And when we run into trouble is when we have expectations for someone or even ourselves that we think things aren't moving along with the grief process fast enough, or they're moving too fast even in some cases. You know, these stages really aren't like when you have kids and, you know, there's that book that says, okay, 0 to 3 months, they should be doing these things. And 6 to 12 months, kids usually do this. Grief isn't like that at all. So for most of us, grief is just is pretty messy. The interesting thing about the stages of grief as defined by Kubler-Ross is that they're pretty universal across all the cultures and all the adult age groups. And another thing I just want to mention about grief and loss is it really isn't limited to just death and dying. We grieve lots of things, especially right now. Some people are grieving job loss or financial difficulties. Some people are grieving their independence or their connection with other people. Some people are grieving just having that normal routine and the loss of what feels pretty stable. I was actually reading this great article on grief.com that talked about this underlying discomfort most of us are feeling right now during this kind of corona COVID experience. And that underlying discomfort is actually probably grief. So of course we grieve someone's death, but we might also grieve a divorce or loss of another relationship. Lots of things can be classified as grief or loss, and really half the battle is recognizing it and in yourself or someone you love, so we can name it and then we can go on to deal with it. All right, so let's dive into the stages of grief. The first stage is defined as denial. Now this stage really helps us survive a big loss. During this stage, people start to kind of feel confused, they might feel numb. Here, we are actually just avoiding the shock of the event. You can deny the news, and denial really helps our brain, it's like a protective mechanism that we use so that we don't become overwhelmed with our emotions and our grief. Sometimes we really are trying to just deny that situation and push back those feelings that we do not want to get overwhelmed with. Denial really helps us kind of pace out our grief. It helps those feelings to come in a little bit more slowly. And when we no longer start to suppress those and really start to take a good look at them and deal with them, then the next stage kind of jumps into our minds, and that would be anger. So once we start to really live with the reality of a situation, the anger really starts to set in for many people. When something big hits, lots of times we start to feel a little bit adrift. You know, that kind of surreal feeling you feel. I remember going to the grocery store after my grandma died, and everyone's just shopping and doing their thing like you would at a grocery store. And I kept looking around feeling like, why is everyone acting normal? And why are they just buying their regular food and doing their regular things? Don't they know this big thing has happened? And you just feel sort of overwhelmed by those feelings. Lots of times we start to do the why me and what ifs. So during the anger phase, we might even look for someone else to blame. You might redirect your anger onto someone else, or even to your closest friends and family. You might even start to blame God, which, like, why didn't he protect my person? Why didn't he stop that accident from happening? Why isn't he in control of this situation? Why didn't he keep us safe? You might even find yourself angry at the person who died, if that's what happened. The anger kind of becomes our anchor. It helps us from becoming really adrift and gives us some structure and really gives us something to hold on to. Most people really can't bypass this stage. A problem that happens here is sometimes people kind of get stuck in the anger stage and really never come out and stay there their whole lives. So the next stage would be known as bargaining. This is where we start saying what if and if only. So we want life to go back to the way it was before this thing happened, before COVID invaded our lives, before our spouse died. We really want to say, well, what if and if only they hadn't left at this certain time and this accident hadn't happened? What if they found the tumor sooner? Or, what if we could have prevented that accident from happening? A lot of what ifs and if only happens here. And guilt really is bargaining's best friend. They like to hang out together. So there's a lot of guilt in this stage lots of times too. We think about what we could have done different, what someone else should have done different to kind of change the outcome to where it is today. We might even have that bargain with pain. We'll do anything not to feel that pain, so we just kind of want to stay in the past and not even deal with what's going on. The next stage would be called depression. Now, depression is really something we do typically expect from someone grieving or from a grief or loss situation. And remember, grief is really broad. It's just not the loss of a person, but it could be anything that's important to us. I think lots of times we don't want to identify this phase and say, hey, I'm depressed, because we kind of worry that we'll get stuck there, or we might be defined as mentally ill or something like that. It is actually really normal, and it's a very appropriate response. If something big happens or a big loss happens, it would be almost abnormal not to have some level of depression. That's a coping mechanism. If grief is a process of healing, then depression is really one of those necessary steps along the way. Moving on to what would be called the last stage, if you were going linear. And again, remember, you can go anywhere on this continuum. You might even go forward a couple and back a couple, is acceptance. For many people, that's kind of the final stage. And really, it's not saying it's okay, I lost my job, or it's okay that my parent died. It's saying that I am going to be okay, that the emotions are going to start to stabilize, and that you start to really get used to what would be called your new reality. It's not a good thing that happened, it's a thing that happened. And it's a thing that I can deal with and I can live with, whatever that looks like for the new normal. Here you might start to establish some new relationships. You might start doing some of your old favorite activities that you enjoy, and then here you might even jump back for a while to a phase and then jump forward. There'll be some good days and some bad days, and the hope that is over time that you'll start to have more good days than bad days. But grief really does need its time, and for everyone that time looks a little bit different. So what do you do while you're in this grieving process? Again, I really think it's important to be able to identify that, yes, I am grieving and I might be in one of these stages. And I just need to give myself some time to get through this grieving process. And it really is a continual process. And hopefully, like with my grandma, we were very close. And over time, that ache is less sharp and it has settled down. And it does pop up sometimes when there's a special something, but it is more manageable, and it gives me, sometimes I just spend some time in some more happy memories. All right, so let's talk about what you can do when you're in the grieving process. So remember, number one, you are human, and we need to be gentle with ourselves and our loved ones that are going through grief. Sometimes it's really hard to be on the sidelines watching someone go through grief. If you can't figure out what to do, just do what you know to do. Do some of your normal routine. Do some self-care. Get sleep on a schedule. Don't sleep all day, stay up all night, unless you're a night owl and that's what you normally do. If you normally go to bed at 9 and get up at 5 or 10 and whatever it is, then do that. Stay on your normal schedule. Eat healthy food. Don't sit around and just eat junk all the time, because that's not going to make anybody feel better. Just keep doing your normal activities till they become more normal. Maybe you just need to make a goal that you're going to do one normal thing today. So say, I'm going to take a shower. That's a goal. If you're going to take a shower today, that might be all you can do, but make sure you're trying to work toward something that is more of a routine. For us believers, I encourage you to get into the Word and pray. Even if you don't feel like it, even if you're mad, even if you just feel completely disconnected from God, just going through some of those normal activities with God will start to help bring some healing. Now, talking about it is a really great way to process grief. Really find a trusted friend or somebody that you can talk to in confidence. It can even help to talk to others that are going through, say if we both have a shared person that died, talking to them and really processing your grief together can really help bring some healing there. I think we really need to sometimes give ourselves and even our loved ones permission to move into the stage of acceptance. You can tell yourself it's okay and be accepting of someone else that seems to be moving there, so that they don't feel like they're doing something wrong by really trying to get a new normal. It is okay to get that new normal. It is okay to feel happy again. And yes, you're going to still feel sad, but at least if you give yourself permission to move to a new normal, you might really start to move into that way. Spend some time outdoors. Nature really is one of God's way of just kind of communicating his love for us, and most people feel better when they've been outdoors for a period of time. Studies actually show that 30 minutes of being outside can really help with depression overall. You can also write your feelings out in a journal. It really is like talking, but on paper. If that is helpful to you, it can really be great to just throw all those feelings and all those things out on paper. Again, be patient with yourself, and lastly, get some professional help if you kind of don't have anyone to talk to, or you get stuck in one of these phases. And we are going to actually talk about that a little bit more in a bit. All right, now on the flip side, let's talk about some things we can do to come along someone who is in the grieving process. Now, I was looking at things you say and don't say to someone grieving, and I know that I have said at least some of these things to someone having a loss. And so when I was reading them, it really made a lot of sense that you shouldn't say that. And I have gotten better over the years, but we all can use a reminder of some do's and don'ts for kind of coming along someone. Alongside, there we go. Okay, so don't say this. At least they've lived a long life. Many people die young. So I think just hearing me say it, you can right away be like, yeah, that doesn't really sound that helpful. So probably need to not say that. Or the all favorite, he or she is in a better place. Now, as believers of Jesus, yes, that is absolutely true. But really the only one that's allowed to say that is the person that's grieving. Everyone else, it just sounds kind of unhelpful. She brought this on herself. I don't care how close you are to the person or the situation or how true it actually is. That's a big nope. Aren't you over him or your pet or your job or whatever it is? Nope, nope, double nope. You got to respect the timeline here. So you can't just say, are you over this yet? Because it's not up to you to say that. And how about he or she was such a good person, God wanted them with him. That's really not helping when you want your person to be physically with you in your own life right now. Sometimes we don't even want to share with God. Also, people like to say, I know how you feel. And even if this is true, if you have a situation that is like almost identical to this person's situation, it's still a no. We are just there to listen and support that person. And maybe when they get farther down their grief journey, then you can kind of partner with them and talk with them about it. But really, it needs to be all about them for this time. Be strong. That is right up there with my husband telling me to calm down when I'm not. It just ain't nobody doing that. So, and then don't try to fix their loss or tell them how to fix it. Again, you're just there to support and listen to them. And don't minimize your loss. Well, at least it was only your whatever. At least, you have a job that you can work 5 hours a week instead of the 40 hours a week. Well, they're still, grieving the 35 hours a week they're not working. So don't minimize their grief. And don't try to force the grief timeline. Don't be trying to rush them through it or slow them down. Because sometimes people feel like they might be going too fast, but that's not our job to determine that. So a few do say things. I am so sorry for your loss. Just really being present for their feelings and letting them know you feel sorry without trying to change their feelings and tell them they should be mad or sad or whatever. Just, I'm sorry. I wish I had the right words. I just know that I care. And here, again, it's really important that someone knows that you care about them and we're not trying to fix it. I don't know how you feel, but I'm here for you in any way I can. This is great because it recognizes their loss and doesn't try to explain it away or rationalize it or say, oh, well, he lived a long life, so, it's all fine. My favorite memory of your loved one is. People really like to hear good memories and fun stories of their person. I think it really is very helpful. I am always a phone call away. Here, you might actually have to be the one that initiates a phone call because sometimes if they're in like that depression stage, they might not want to reach out and they might not even answer the phone if you call. You might just have to be content with leaving a message or leaving a note for them in their mailbox. Mailbox is a thing near the house where you put letters in. Maybe people don't use those anymore. I don't know. You can also give a hug instead of saying something. But my husband wanted to mention here that we're not all huggers, so maybe don't hug a non-hugger like him. And it really just is important that you recognize their loss and you don't minimize it, and it really helps to come alongside them in that way. So while we are all different and we grieve at our own pace, there are some things that we really do need to pay attention to. If you find yourself really feeling and knowing that you're stuck in one of these phases and you can't get unstuck with, taking a walk with your best friend or crying on someone's shoulder, no amount of prayer or anything will really get you unstuck, or your spouse or trusted friend says, I'm really worried about you. I just really want to encourage you to bring it up a notch and consult a mental health professional. These guys are trained to help you with either long-term or short-term. They really are there to support people in these different kinds of situations, and they have a lot of training. And grief and loss is a thing that goes to professionals a lot. can I just say to my Christian friends, if you go to a counselor, this does not mean that you don't have enough faith, and it doesn't mean that you don't trust Jesus. It means that you are going to use some of the tools that God provided for you to get through this. Trust me, your testimony can handle it. And your testimony might even be that I went through this tough time and I sought this really great Christian counselor who helped me through it. And maybe you might need some short-term medication or long-term medication help. Those guys are really there to help direct all that. And right now, there's a lot of groups, even grief groups that you could attend. There's virtual things right now. There's Facebook groups that all support grieving and loss recovery. And lastly, I want to say, if you are in a place that you decide that taking your life is the only way out, is the only option, I'm asking you that you call this number on your screen and talk with somebody there before you make this decision that can't be taken back. They might be able to help you see some things that you were unable to see while you're at this place in your life. I had someone that I was very close to that took her life that loved Jesus. And it broke my heart because it made me question, did she love Jesus or what was going on there? Well, number one, it's not my job to figure that out. And number two, it made me profoundly sad because I couldn't understand how deeply sad and full of grief she was, that she could not see another way. And so when I framed it that I couldn't understand what was going on, or that level, that depth and level of grief, then it really helped me just realize that we need to be standing in the gap as much as we can for people. And I just want you, or if you have a loved one, to reach out to this phone number or this website. And they have a lot of great resources even for people that have people that are in this situation, so that they can support and kind of know what to do to help people. I know that was a lot of information, and for some people it might be information that's new. For some of you, you might have heard it before. But can encourage you that if you are on a grief or loss journey right now, there's lots of great resources. This grief.com is owned kind of by the Keebler-Ross folks, and they had a lot of great articles and videos and things that you can watch, and then even resources to get hooked up with grief groups or counselors. So I would recommend going to that, because I feel like they had a lot of really great resources. All right, that's it for me. I miss you guys, and I can't wait to see you in person, and I appreciate your time today, and I hope you have a great day.